Good morning, Meshach. It's Thursday, April 20th, and 2 days ago I had the unfortunate and disturbing experience of watching this vertically oriented Alamar shovel heaps of unadulterated bullcrap down thousands of unsuspecting victims' throats. So in today's video, I thought I'd explore some of Shell-Shocked Larry the Cucumber's most recent videos and expose him for the clout-hungry, avaricious bottom feeder he is. So let's dive right into this septic tank of fraud and fear-mongering and discover who this personified LinkedIn ad really is. Ken Wax, or as I prefer to pronounce it, Ken Wax, is the Chicago-based co-founder of a company called Foresight. Spelled incorrectly, of course. Which, if you follow any of the links he provides, you'll discover is a half-baked Expedia knockoff that he and his goons are using to scam his TikTok audience for money. He's also a technical manager at Walmart Connect, where he, quote, serves as a subject matter expert to many cross-functional teams and stakeholders both inside and outside of the company. Which, like, cool, bro. Anyways, just a short scroll later and you discover that this inflatable hipster doll is also a content creator. Hey, like me! Except not really at all like me, because although his LinkedIn claims that he, quote, creates educational content about anything and everything covering tech, economics, luxury, fashion, brand / company history, children's books, career content, as well as food and lifestyle content, which again is exceptionally poorly written, the reality is that this guy isn't your local Derek Muller or Hank Green. He's a professional fear-mongering conspiracy theorist who is preying on people's perceptions of Chicago and other urban areas as war-riddled hellscapes in order to advance his otherwise underwhelming and unfulfilling career. See, I'm usually a pretty friendly guy, and even as I lay into this husk of an influencer, I feel bad calling him names. Cheap potshots at his looks and his career are usually not my style. And I hope that my audience and Ken know that I don't mean those jabs in earnest, but I do mean my criticisms in earnest. And I'm using the tone that I am in this video because this one got on my nerves. Take a look.
If you live in Chicago or were in Chicago and you were leaving a restaurant, bar, club, whatever at night and a car rolled up to you and offered you a free ride, not an Uber, not a taxi, not a professional driver, and they offered you a free ride just for out of the goodness of their heart, there is a chance that you were almost a victim of an organized crime ring.
There's a serial killer in Chicago, and I was almost one of their victims.
Hey Mark, my name's Ken, and I'm sorry we're meeting like this, but I've probably been tagged in your video over 100 times. I've been building a map. Black is where people were found in rivers or lakes. Purple is where women were missing who ended up being found in one of those locations. Orange, which you are, is an attempted pickup. I don't know what you like doing on Friday nights. Me personally, I love staying in, doing a little bit of laundry, getting ahead on work, and fact-checking mainstream media. The news. Viral media posts spark speculation about a string of drownings in Chicago being related. Hey, that's me, just at me. But authorities say no. They were kind enough to provide this super helpful map of where some of these people were found to prove it. But I just built my own map with the information that I was able to find, and mine looks a little bit different. They found the body of Carlos Alejandro Arce. He also went by Alex. He was 27 years old, and he had been missing since 4/1/2023. Also, shameless plug, if you made it this far, I'm the co-founder and chief marketing officer of a startup called Foresight. It's a mobile app. It's free. It's free. And if you really want to be a real one, you actually can invest directly in the startup. We have a guaranteed seed round coming in like a couple of months, but we could use a little bit of extra help to get there. But yeah, this is what I've been working on, and I think it's going to literally revolutionize overnight how people plan their stuff with their friends, trips, experiences, everything. It's really cool, and I'm really excited.
What you just watched were the deranged ramblings of a man so tied up in his own conspiracy that, given other circumstances, I may have just dismissed them as the lunacy they are. But unfortunately, not only have these default millennials videos reached millions of people, they've also been sent to me multiple times by people who are concerned for my safety because they know of my connection to Chicago. So let me spare you the nearly half hour of grifting you would need to endure in order to understand the full scope of this conspiracy, by giving you a brief synopsis of the fantasy world this man has conjured. Ken Blue Checkmark over here believes that there is a pressing safety concern for most, if not all, urban areas in the United States, but specifically, and maybe especially in Chicago. According to him, there is an interstate crime syndicate which is preying on people who leave bars and clubs and parties while they are drunk. They drive up on them, ask them if they want a ride, and if they accept, then they do something. They like take money from them or sometimes murder them, and when they murder them, they dump their bodies into nearby bodies of water. But also maybe not that. Maybe instead it's a serial killer, and the serial killer is preying on these people, and they're the ones leaving the bodies in the water. That might be it. More than that, this Planet 51 Extra claims that he has evidence of the schemes that this, interstate crime syndicate and /or serial killer is using to perform these murders. He has details of how precisely these kidnappings are happening, where they're occurring, how dirty cops and journalists might be covering it up, and more. See, the story goes that in the past 2 months, Ken Whackass has been offered rides by people when he was leaving a bar or a club, and the rides were free. Did I mention they were free? And, and one time he noticed that there was a truck driving behind the car that offered him a ride. And if that's not evidence of an interstate crime syndicate and /or a serial killer, I don't know what is. But that's not all. See, after the haunting near-death experience of being offered a ride and discovering that other people also had the experience of being offered a ride late at night when leaving a bar or club, Kenny Boy here decided to do some digging. And what he found will shock you. After sorting through countless public records and public news articles and public testimonies and other stuff you can find on the first page of Google, our hardened and gritty TikTok journalist managed to put together several maps. Maps which, well, they documented previously documented disappearances and deaths and bodies found in bodies of water and, other tragic accidents. But because news organizations didn't decide to report on all of these simultaneously, that must mean that they're in on it. They're trying to hide something, and don't even get me started on those bad cops that determined that there was no foul play in any of these disappearances or dead bodies. I mean, it's not like there has been a long history of people stumbling out of bars drunk and falling into the lake. It's impossible that it's a well-recorded thing and that deaths happen to spike during winter months when the water is colder. It must be those evil cops. They're covering something up.
I talked to my friend who's a cop for an hour today. And the reason that foul play isn't suspected is because, I hate to say it, but there has been a long history of people who get drunk and fall in the river. They have video of people, I'm not sure any of these people, following down to the river and falling in. And because they're drunk, they're in such a shock state that sadly they pass away. Is it related? I don't know. We're talking now about probability versus possibility.
I mean, of course that happens, but this is different, and also is connected to that time that this guy was offered a ride, and other people were offered rides as well. So, now listen, if red flags aren't going off for you already, I kind of don't know what to tell you. This whole story, this whole imagination is bullshit for countless reasons. But to be sure, I'll go through some of them. Number one is that he just doesn't have any evidence whatsoever. I wish I was kidding or exaggerating about how disjointed this story is, but the reality is that Ken of Barbie and Ken fame just doesn't have any links to connect anything here. And what's worse is, I think he knows as much. According to him, he and other people were offered rides outside of bars. There's evidence that people have disappeared in similar areas, and that's pretty much it. I mean, someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but as far as I can see, that's the whole story. There's some hand-waving about how cops don't want to investigate this and about how journalists don't want to write about this story, but there's nothing there to write about. There's nothing there to investigate. The cops are refusing to investigate because, as is pointed out in these very TikToks, there is nothing illegal about offering a stranger a ride. And without more evidence presented to them, there's no reason for cops to reinvestigate cases which have already been closed, especially when the resources are already being stretched so thin as is the case in so many cities, including Chicago. Likewise, respectable news organizations wouldn't post this story in a million years because it's not a story, it's fabrication, it's conjecture. What's maybe more important though is that I think this grift stain knows that there's no evidence of the things he's speculating about. He's always sure to hedge his bets and say things like,
I don't know if all of these cases are connected. These cases happening all over the country, but
or
I do not know if it is related to the people who have gone missing. I do not know if it is related to the people who have gotten in cars, been mugged, and dropped off without their phone and their wallet several blocks away. But
it should be clear that these videos aren't just floating the ideas of national crime syndicates or serial killers as if they're random possibilities. The videos are clearly pointing his viewers in a particular direction, and when he's not busy hedging his bet, he's busy making sure that everyone knows that his theory is probably correct. Number 2, in addition to not having any evidence, it's clear that Senor Boca Chiquita over here is directing his audience to his scam startup. If you haven't watched his videos, go ahead and guess how many times his startup company comes up in this supposedly serious investigation into the murder of dozens of people across the United States. How about 4 times in 12 videos, including an uninterrupted minute of, quote, a shameless plug?
also, shameless plug. Would be so kind as to potentially download it, leave us a review, help us out with that. It's free. It's free.
In which he explicitly calls upon his viewers to invest their money in his startup. Look, maybe it's just me, but the tone shift from, I believe that dozens of people are being murdered across the United States by a crime organization that is preying on people who are intoxicated. More than that, I believe there's evidence to suggest that journalists and police departments know that this is happening and are letting it transpire. To, hey guys, I've been having a really stressful week. In fact, so much so that I'm hiring an assistant. But I do have this startup app that you can download here, and if you don't want to download it, or if you're feeling extra generous, you can choose to invest in it over here. Links in the description. I mean, it's a hard transition. But here's the crazy part. Even when he's not explicitly advertising his startup, which again is bullshit, he's putting all of his resources and the stupid maps that he made at the bottom of his beacon, which is essentially a link tree. So you have to scroll past the startup and his TikTok and his Instagram and his LinkedIn in order to get to the subject matter that he's actually talking about. Now, I'll get to a third point here in a second, but I did download his app. And if I wasn't sure that it was a scam based off the fake reviews on his website and the fact that it's like very clearly a pump and dump scheme that he and his buddies are doing, I would be sure that it was a scam after having downloaded the app. I don't know how to describe it outside of saying that like literally most 14-year-olds who have a computer science class in high school could have programmed the app. I mean, it's just embarrassingly bad, and it uses like stock photos for everything, and also it's just like a very blatant ripoff of other apps, and it doesn't even do those things well. Like, you have to manually enter everything yourself. It's essentially an elaborate note-taking app, but with no useful features, and specifically marketed towards people who are traveling frequently enough that they want to make a social media out of traveling. Like, what is the target audience here? I could do a whole video on just how bad this app is. Don't go download it for yourself because you're just helping him out. But boy, oh boy, don't invest in this app. Even if the investment itself wasn't a scam, there would be no value in investing in this app. Okay, part number 3. He also has social and professional incentives to just peddle nonsense. His Chicago PSA playlist has generated millions of views, which is gonna look really good on his LinkedIn page, and what do you know, it's right there. Especially because it seems like he desires a career in marketing or at least in tech. Moreover, the views that these videos gets him ad revenue, and it also gets him more views on his other content, some of which is sponsored. He's making money by peddling this nonsense. Not only that, but I bet it feels really good to post a video that gets millions of views, especially after you've posted dozens of videos, which turned out to be duds. But you know what? Just for the sake of argument, let's imagine that this failed tech bro actually had a point. Let's just imagine a world where he actually had some extensive knowledge about this crime organization that was working in collaboration with the cops to just like murder civilians for fun, I guess? I don't know. And just for a second, let's put ourselves in that person's shoes. What would you do? Would you maybe request in-person meetings with respected journalists after divulging just enough information to let on that you have a story? Simultaneously, you might contact the Department of Justice and the FBI and local politicians just to make sure that some authority is aware of the scheme. Perhaps you would try to keep your knowledge of the situation quite secret, not only for your own protection, but also because the criminals might catch wind that someone's onto them and change their tactics before they can be taken down. Or, instead of all those things, would you go to Tik Tok, the supposed Chinese spy software, and advertise your startup company in the same videos that you're talking about this criminal activity? Again, discussions of apparent murders of innocent young men, and also your personal startup, which is a scam, in the same video. It should be obvious to the millions of people that have watched this animated Owl Pellets videos that he is nothing but a bona fide scammer. And here, this is the part of the video where I discuss the elephant in the room, or more accurately, the flag in the room. The astute among you may have noticed that I too am from Chicago, and I wave that flag proudly in the background of all of my videos. The reason that Ken Wackass's videos annoyed me as much as they did is because they weren't just insulting my intelligence, they were also insulting my city. People already perceive Chicago as a dangerous war zone not fit for families or even for visiting. I know because sometimes I tell people I'm from Chicago, and I see the silhouette of fear dance across their face, as they remember the countless news stories of shootings that occurred in Chicago, and they hear in their head the fear-mongering voices of Tucker Carlson insisting that Chicago is dangerous and evil and bad. And yes, as they remember the bullshit TikTok stories of kidnappings that never happened. My city, Chicago, it has problems. Just this past weekend, there were atrocities committed. There was blood spilled on the streets of the city that I call home. But people like you, Ken, fill us with fear and despair, instead of hope and the knowledge that a better future is possible. Ken, this part is for you. If you have the evidence that you say you do, stop posting about it on TikTok, and I'll look forward to eating my words several months from now when your story is plastered on headlines all over the United States. If you don't have the evidence that you claim to, which you don't, then you're part of the problem. You are sowing doubt in fundamental institutions for our democracy, like our journalists and our police. You are scamming the people that have brought you financial and creative freedom. You are fear-mongering, and you are further ruining the reputation of a good city filled with good people. And you ought to be ashamed of yourself. I've got a lot more to say about this procedurally generated skincare routine of a man, but I've already made a mountain out of a molehill with this guy, so if you have comments, questions, concerns, leave them in the comment section down below. If you want more diving into the app, or other stuff that I found on his channel, or just elaborating on the whole story that he outlined, I'd be more than happy to do so. I'll also be in the comment section answering any questions and addressing any concerns. If you're one of the people that believed in these videos, I hope that I've dissuaded you, but if not, then you can feel free to tell me in the comment section all about how wrong I am. Meshach, I'm glad you're back. I wish that I could have spent this video celebrating the fact that you were back and discussing what you talked about in your video, but I didn't feel like I could let this one slip by. Meshach Schmackers, thank you for letting me take you on this journey, and I will see you next week.